What does the goddamn line say, Tony?
Please do not use gendered language.
Then what? I'll be arrested, put in airport jail?
Well, you're going completely sideways, man.
It's a big club, and you ain't in it.
How dare you?
Mr. Speaker, the President of the United States.
I'm Chris Hansen with Dave on NBC.
Jack Marius Tack Theratrix.
Hi, I'm Spartacus.
Jackson, Sacramento, he, him. Steven Seagal.
Sex offender guy.
I'm Keith Morris.
This is Mumbai Gutapi.
I'm Rick James, bitch.
Sorting through the lies.
The hijacker's passport was found blocks from the World Trade Center crash site, if you can believe that.
We cannot track $2.3 trillion in transactions.
And uncovering the centuries-long plan for world domination.
Learning about Cuba, having some food.
Let's talk about Chinese people.
Have you ever been in a Turkish prison? Swangles and Fort Lauderdale?
I have sent 6 of my Libyan missiles to blow up the Sears hardware department.
Nothing could be more fun than jumping off a cliff with 2 German bisexuals.
Oh, you English are so superior, aren't you?
Thank you, comrade.
And now, macroaggressions.
That's what assholes call it.
With your host,
Buddy, I don't know who you are, but you're about to get chlamydia.
Charlie Robinson.
Hey, Whitey, where's your hat?
You want to drop the blame on Charlie and say it's all Charlie's fault.
He was a retard.
I get some goddamn diuretic.
Welcome to Macroaggressions. I am your host, Charlie Robinson. Thanks for checking us out on Iconic or wherever podcasts are served. We certainly do appreciate that. Check out our sponsors in the description below. Scribd, if you are into ebooks, audiobooks, or e-magazines, they have everything that you could possibly want there. The best books and audiobooks are waiting for you at Scribd. It's only $9.99 a month. You can get your first month free. Check it out. If you don't like it, cancel anytime. Any support for Scribd helps to support the show. And our other sponsor is CuriosityStream. And if you are a geek for documentaries like I am, you've got to get CuriosityStream. It's $2.99 a month. That's 10 cents a day. Give me a break. What are you waiting for? High definition quality. You can stream it to your laptop, television, phone, or tablet. Unlimited streaming of thousands of shows. It's available offline as well, and it is available worldwide. Check out CuriosityStream. Well, last year at Acapulco, I was excited to check out David Icke's presentation. I was in the front row. I was ready to go. And I think everybody at the conference was excited about that. He certainly was the big draw. And Jeffrey Tucker, who was the MC, did not introduce David Icke. It was somebody else. They figured there was a much better person, a better fit for that. He is the head of We Are Change. He is an investigative journalist. He's been doing this a long time. He's an original gangster of the alternative media. I am talking about my man, Luke Rudkowski. How are you, Luke?
I'm doing great, trying to survive the quarantine in the coronavirus crazy area of New York City, but doing my best as I can, as I just returned from CPAC, where that's a whole another crazy conundrum unfolding right now.
So is this a self-quarantine, or are you being ordered? Have they welded your doors shut yet?
No, I think it's best that we all take as much precautions as we can, and that's what I've been doing. I've been spending a lot of time here doing a lot of work. And, we just started a second channel, busting my hump, releasing as many videos as I can, working behind the scenes from a lot of exciting stuff. So, yeah, it's not even a quarantine. It's just like me working my butt off as I usually do, just staying inside. So the usual self-quarantine, that's not really a quarantine, but just me working like I usually do.
That's what I was doing. I do it every summer when I sit down and start to work on a book. My wife and daughter go out of town for about 5 or 6 weeks to her parents' beach house, and I'm stuck at home all by myself, and all I do is write. And it would appear from the outside that I was quarantined, but it's just self-quarantine. It's just a good good time to get down to business and get some work done. So there is a bright side to this virus, I suppose, and that is
everything's an opportunity.
Yeah,
if you really look at it, okay, now it's time to hunker down and to really build up this alternative media organization. It's time to really work, do a ton of research, and to so again, you got to see the bright side. There's not a lot of bright side with this latest scenario, but that's what I'm trying to see it as.
No, but I just got done watching a video that you and Tim Picciott put out. So you guys are working together now. You're doing all kinds of interesting things. Tell me a little bit about that. It was, you and I just talked a couple days ago, Epstein related, and this was sort of a new spin on Epstein from Eric Weinstein, right?
Yeah, this was very interesting. We just released that video earlier this morning. And what we're trying to do here is to get away from our channel being hammered and targeted as it is. Like, if you look at our channel, we're losing hundreds and thousands of subscribers per day. We're also gaining them per day, but a lot of people are just being unsubscribed without them even doing it themselves. And they're messaging me, hey, I'm just being unsubscribed here. We don't know what the hell's going on.
It happened to me. I got unsubscribed from We Are Change between the last time you and I talked and today. I went on and checked it and I was unsubscribed, and I obviously didn't do that.
Yeah, and this is happening in the hundreds. This is happening in the thousands, and this is happening every single day. And obviously, we don't have the best relationship with YouTube since we confronted the head honcho, Eric Schmidt, at Bilderberg now twice. You would think confronting Eric Schmidt, Alphabet head, former Pentagon board of AI innovation. You think that would make a dent, especially at their secretive and elusive Bilderberg meeting, which there's a national blackout to in the United States that, again, many news organizations don't report on, except for very few of them, or just mainly independent media like myself. So obviously we get the full brunt of that, but I like to cover and look into things that, of course, the mainstream media doesn't report on. That's why I like Bilderberg, and that's why this Jeffrey Epstein story is an important story to cover. This is why I've taken many personal risks in trying to get as much information as I can about the story, and that's why I'm following it very closely. Anyone considering themselves a journalist should still be following this story very closely, and they're not. So again, we're independent media, and of course we also get punished for it by YouTube for doing that. That's why we have a second brand new channel called Change the News. It's a corny name, but we're thinking of a better one. But the second video we did officially is, of course, this latest revelation from Eric Weinstein. If you don't know who Eric Weinstein is, he's some kind of scientific, intellectual kind of YouTuber. He's been on the Joe Rogan podcast a couple of times. He's an interesting guy. He usually, when he speaks, talks about his mental perspective, and just as he's figuring stuff out, he describes it pretty well. And he released a podcast that he specifically recorded a few months ago, and he recorded it. If the media wasn't going to do their job, he was going to release this interview. He just decided to release it, and it's pretty interesting. It's pretty fascinating, and it's about the time where 15 plus years ago, he was invited to Jeffrey Epstein's mansion in New York, the largest living complex for an individual at the time in all of Manhattan. And he goes into some very, very interesting details about meeting Epstein and a lot of the circumstantial evidence surrounding it that really was eye-opening, to say the least.
Yeah, Eric Weinstein's an interesting guy because I looked at Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell and their work with the scientists like Marvin Minsky and guys like that, and and the AI guys. And what you find is that there's a lot of overlap between Epstein and some of the things that he was interested in working with, and some of the things that Peter Thiel is interested in and working on as well. And one of the things that kind of struck me as funny is Peter Thiel's, obviously he's got Palantir, which is tied in with the government, and he has PayPal. He was a co-founder of, one of the first investors in Facebook, but he's also involved in a company called Ambrosia, which is doing blood work, which is taking young blood and selling it to older people to rejuvenate themselves. And Eric Weinstein works for Peter Thiel. And so I wonder if I'd be interested to get those guys in a room. I'd be interested to talk to Peter Thiel about some of this stuff, because I think that he might be on the fringe. I can't tell if he's a good guy or a bad guy. He's kind of, he's into the sorts of things that bad guys are into, but I've never heard anyone say directly that he's on the wrong side of humanity. I'm not quite sure about that. What do you know about that?
Yeah, and he also exposes and talks about a lot of libertarian freedom kind of values that are very popular amongst the alternative media crowd.
Sure.
He's also he also was one of the few people that was invited on stage at the RNC convention by Donald Trump. So obviously he's also connected to Donald Trump. He's also connected to some military industrial complex agencies. The Palpatier, there's no denying that as well. That's also very, very interesting. It's extremely complex to see the situation unfold between him and Google, which he has been calling out and saying that Google is selling AI intelligence to the Chinese government, and it's being compromised and is giving the Chinese government the, quote, new nuclear weapon. And that, of course, is artificial intelligence. But at the same time, Google is his direct competitor, which also makes you think if there's a conflict of interest that might be financially tied or not. But again, we also talked to Peter Thiel at Bilderberg as well. It wasn't that long of a conversation, but an interesting one, definitely an eye-opening one. We talked to him twice. But one thing that I think binds Epstein and Peter Thiel, and according to Eric Weinstein, Epstein was a person that could have been a proxy of the intelligence agencies to finance and to fund controversial scientific subjects that the government was too afraid to have direct ties to, that he was the kind of middleman that would go to scientists and give them funding for things that are too controversial for the government to officially have their signature on. So this could be one explanation to it. I mean, if you really look at the stuff that you released, especially with the doll, the creepy kind of pedal doll that Epstein was financing, I mean, it doesn't sort to anything good. And I think this is where Eric Weinstein is kind of wrong on his assertion, because he does say that it does look like Epstein was protected by the intelligence agencies, that this was a big intelligence agency operation, but that it's only a few rogue members. And this is where I kind of challenge Eric Weinstein on that assertion, because this is not a rare occurrence where you have billionaire, millionaire pedophiles with their own private 727 jets with their own private islands being connected to the government. I mean, you look at Edward Heath, you look at Jimmy Savile, Peter Nygaard, Dennis Hassert, Joris Deming, all these government individuals tied in to government, also pedophile monsters abusing children, hurting them where they can't ever be healed for the rest of their life. This is not a rare occurrence. So this is where I kind of challenged Eric Weinstein on his initial assertion. But other than that, I kind of thank him for speaking up and being brave enough to raise his voice, because as he even said himself, yes, there's a worry and concern that there might be retaliation against him, or there might be even ridicule and a direct association of him. He goes also to defend some of his buddies in the scientific community during this podcast. But most importantly, this is another thing that he brought up. He brought up a scientist friend that he knows that was extremely disturbed by Epstein's behavior, that ran out of his mansion, that was extremely, extremely unhappy with what Epstein was doing. And then, that kind of raises a lot of flags and a lot of questions to why wasn't the right thing done here? And of course, if you look at the bigger story, the authorities, the police officers, the feds, the prosecutors, the judges, even doctors here, we're all paid off, we're all bought off. And obviously anyone speaking about Epstein or even looking into Epstein was targeted for a harassment campaign. You look at Harvey Weinstein, he hired former Israeli Mossad agents under the Black Cube organization to harass and spy on victims and journalists. This is widely open. This is widely talked about. You look at Epstein, it looks like a bigger operation than Harvey Weinstein, in my opinion. What do you think?
Yeah, well, I wondered about that. If Harvey Weinstein was the West Coast franchise and Epstein was the East Coast franchise, I mean, it certainly was. Obviously, they have cover stories going on. Harvey Weinstein had Miramax, and then after that he had his own Weinstein Company's production company. So he had the cover to look like a Hollywood producer, which of course he was. But I don't know that there's much of a fine line between being a Hollywood producer and being just a run-of-the-mill scumbag. I'm sure he fit that category. I'm sure that's why he got into movie producing. I doubt it was for a love of movies. I'm sure it was to get laid and make a bunch of money. But then beyond that, when you look at who Weinstein was connected to, as far as his use of Black Cube, then it's not too far of a stretch to think that he also had ties to Mossad. And if he did, then what sort of operation could he have been running? It might not have been identical to what Epstein was running. It would have different components to it. But the fact that it would be trying to entrap people, get them into situations, and then use that information against them. Oh, I'm sure that he was well aware of how that was done, and no doubt he probably had things wired up himself, I would imagine.
Without a doubt. I mean, he had all the money. And just to clarify, there is no connection or relation between Eric Weinstein and Harvey Weinstein, just for the record over there. But
to be clear.
Yeah. But there's a lot of weird connections between, again, Harvey Weinstein and Jeffrey Epstein, the two individuals who, of course, knew each other, all connected, of course, to also Prince Andrew, to, of course, the Clintons. I mean, the way that things are interconnected here is mind-boggling. And the biggest one is, of course, with the NYPD. The NYPD ran an undercover operation against Harvey Weinstein. And what did they do with that information? They had audio. They had a victim being abused on audio. What did they do? They sat on it, and they never pressed against Harvey Weinstein. When Jeffrey Epstein was supposed to have mandatory visits with his parole officer with the NYPD as a check-in after his deal of a lifetime, what did the NYPD do? Not do their duty and allow him to skip all of those meetings. An average guy who steals from a bodega here, he skips one of those meetings, he gets thrown in jail. Jeffrey Epstein missed all of them. The NYPD didn't do their job. And I wouldn't say even just did their job. The NYPD here is complicit in larger abuse rings. This is the largest police department in all of the United States, one of the most complex, one of the most funded ones. And they're taking a back seat. They're sitting down with these abusers when they know children, other people are being hurt here. I mean, come on, this is absolute ridiculousness, and it doesn't add up, and it makes no sense at all to the average person who doesn't know the bigger side, the bigger story of this.
Yeah, I feel like sometimes they do these hidden camera undercover investigations on a guy, and then if they in a case of Weinstein, they wind up with so much good information that instead of saying we've got everything we need to prosecute him, they look at it and they go, "Holy shit, this is too good. Now what can we do? Maybe we can extract something from him rather than going and putting this guy in jail. Why don't we use this information to get that guy to work for us? We'll get him to do something for us because the information is so good." If it was sort of so-so information, then maybe they'd go, round him up and take him down to the police station and berate him and everything. But when the information is too good, then it becomes, we might be sitting on a gold mine here. Perhaps we should not bring this out to the public and just keep this in our back pocket and make this guy work for us now.
Yeah. And it's also important to point out that the NYPD has their own intelligence branch, which some have compared to top-level intelligence agencies of this country with their capabilities. I dealt with some of these officers when they falsely arrested me for questioning, at that time, Mayor Bloomberg, and they made sure they came into the precinct and they messed up my file so I would be sent down to central bookings and spend 3 days instead of 3 hours getting processed. And then they just, they did everything they could to make my life difficult on the orders of Mayor Bloomberg. So again, them not playing by the rule book is very common. I mean, growing up here in New York City, I saw a lot of officers just abuse their authority. There was even a police officer around my neighborhood that was just raping girls for fun and was able to get away with it for years because he was a police officer. And everyone in the community knew he was a rapist, but he again, used his badge, used his power, and on duty assaulted many women here. And that story was never uncovered because he was protected by this kind of, what do they call it? The blue line of silence? What is it called? The thin line?
The thin blue line.
The thin blue line that, of course, everyone talks about here. But again, look at the NYPD. We're talking about Weiner's laptop. We're talking about the evidence collected on Epstein Island. Where's all that information? Even Virginia Giuffre Roberts, one of the victims here, is saying, hey, everything was videotaped. There was cameras everywhere. They went into the mansion here in New York City. There's a ton of evidence here. Why haven't there been many public arrests? Why haven't this evidence been brought forward? Why hasn't there been any prosecutions of the evidence that they have of all these individuals, which, according to one of the victims here, Virginia Roberts, there's a lot of. And as you said, it makes sense, especially with the NYPD becoming more of an intelligence agency, that they would harbor and control that information for power, because that's essentially what intelligence agencies do at the end of the day. I've been watching Narcos Mexico recently. Holy cow, that series, very eye-opening, but it shows you, a lot of people think it's fictional, but a lot of the accounts that I'm looking at and verifying, they're absolutely true. And it's not just dirty and disgusting with corruption down in Mexico. This is also a more sophisticated case that happens here in the United States and many other places around the world. This is more common than people know about.
Yeah, and in New York City, I mean, if they wanted to go after somebody, I mean, remember Elliot Spitzer? He got rolled up as soon as they wanted to get him. It was easy. They just went, just pulled out all this evidence that they had. I'd be curious to know how much evidence they're sitting on, just waiting for the right guy or waiting for a guy to cross somebody that's on their team, and then they break out this evidence. Because I'm sure Elliot Spitzer, I'm sure that wasn't his first time partaking in the in that adult friend finder sort of activity, and it just seemed that as soon as he started looking into something that they didn't want, boom, next thing you know, he's out of there. So I wouldn't be surprised if they're holding back. And like you mentioned, like the evidence that they gathered from Virginia Giuffre and the evidence from the island, they didn't really secure that island too well, did they?
No, not afterwards. Yeah.
You and Jeff were able to get up there and give yourself a self-guided tour of that place. I'm curious to know, just how did that happen? I mean, I heard the story at Acapulco, but for the benefit of the listeners, you got to give us just at least an abbreviated version of how the hell that happened, because all I see is I get a message from Jeff, and it says this just happened, and I was like, holy shit, okay, you guys have gone to Epstein's island. This ought to be good. So how does that happen?
Well, it was an absolute shit show. Pardon my French. Nothing worked out like we planned it to, and I mean, obviously, this is something major. This is a huge operation that we would be undertaking. And I tried to take it as professionally as I could, just like I do with any high-risk, dangerous operation that I usually take on. I do all my homework. I do all my research. I make sure we're prepared and ready for anything and everything to happen, and that the best-case scenario always happens. And if the best case scenario doesn't happen, we have plan B. Plan B doesn't work out, we have plan C. But the major objective was to get this back into the headlines, is to get the story out there, is to have people talking about it, and to show people that there's still a lot more that we do not know. Since, of course, many federal investigators are sitting on their buttocks. Many people that are supposed to be looking for justice for the victims are nowhere to be found. They're stalling, and there is no justice for the victims. And it's really up for independent media to take risks, just like we did, to step it up a notch and to do the work that the mainstream media should be doing. Not so long ago, there was this idea of muckraking, of investigative journalism, of actually giving information that was valuable to the viewers, and no one really does that. And this is what I'm trying to bring back with We Are Change, and now Change, the news channel that we have going on right now. That's totally brand new, but it was something that I always had in the back of my mind. I always wanted to do for months. I had the opportunity. I was there with my close friends. I was there with Jeff Berwick. We did the best we could. Everything fell through. Luckily, the boat captain decided to surprise us and said, well, you got a couple seconds. You're going to jump on, or you're not going to jump on at all. Your call from here. Really, really surprised us. The boat captain's the real MVP. He's the one that took the risks, because many boat captains, even said just even being around that island, you could get your boat confiscated. You'll have the authorities on you. But he took a big risk, and he allowed us to jump on there. We took full advantage of it until they were screaming for us to get back onto the boat because everyone was scared after the loud noises, and the security guards were looking for us, and they were on golf carts, and people were panicked and worried about what was going to happen from there. And anything could have happened. But luckily, we were able to get in there. We were on the island for about 30 minutes. We filmed everything. We ran around everything. We still didn't see everything. There was still a big portion of the island that we did not get to document, that we did not get to investigate. And, luckily, we were able to get out there safely. Nothing bad happened afterwards. We were able to release the video. And, of course, that video just went viral everywhere. Almost every major news organization was talking about it. After that, Jeffrey Epstein's family's own scientist, the CIA guy that also looked into JFK. What's his name?
Michael Baden.
Yeah. Michael came out and released some of his findings, and then the kind of snowball was building, and it returned back into the news cycle. We're at another time where, again, a lot of these updates are just being totally ignored, and they shouldn't be, because this is the story of the decade. This is the story that essentially shows us everything that we should be looking into and investigating when it comes to what our government is really up to. And when you start looking into it, it's not good. It's not good at all.
Yeah, I made a comment right when he died, and it was out in sort of the public. Everyone in the public was talking about, not the alternative media, not just them. They had been talking about it for years. But once the general public was talking about it, and I made a comment, and I stand by it to this day. I said this story has the ability to take down the government of the United States. The ties that are involved in this are so far up the ladder that to the average person, they might think that this is just a coincidence theory, or, maybe, it's kind of, he was friends with Bill Clinton, but Bill Clinton's not involved. This guy knew everybody. Through his connection through Ghislaine Maxwell, he had ties to not just the royal family, but high-level politics, high-level banking, high-level scientists. I mean, there's a lot going on that's connected with this guy. And one of the things I was curious about in the video, when you guys are on the island, besides the fact that Jeff decided to not wear shoes, not wear a shirt, and just wear his, little Canadian short shorts running around as he does, that temple looked like it was two-dimensional to me. It didn't look like, the door looked like it was painted on. What was going on with that thing?
Yeah. The door was painted on. It was a flat surface. And the two entrances were pretty much barricaded with wooden panels that were nailed in there. Trust me, I did my best to try to open up that door, to try to open up the panel. There was also another doorway directly in the ground, about 50 to 80 feet away from the temple. Which, of course, makes many people speculate that there could have been some kind of underground passage. As we know, Epstein spent double the normal amount for a cement mixer to be shipped rapidly into that island. Right after, of course, federal authorities were investigating him. And according to many, he was tipped off about that federal investigation, which spurred him to buy this cement mixer, pay double for it, just to have it rushed delivered in there. But there was another doorway that was in the ground that was just completely shut, again, with the hammer and nails. Whoever, cleaned up that island definitely made sure that a lot of the more interesting places were very difficult to get into. And the temple had a lot of weird kind of symbology around it. There was a lot of weird gargoyles, a lot of weird symbols. A lot of the stuff has been taken away. But according to some sources, the temple was his kind of piano room where he liked to go alone. According to some, there were more sinister motives that were happening over there. But again, just like Jeff Berwick said, it's kind of like a set. It looked like a total Hollywood fake set, but definitely a weird vibe, definitely a weird energy there, to say the least. And everyone likes to talk about the temple because of just how weird it is, just how awkward it is to have, on top of that entire island, to have this weird looking occult structure that, we still don't know what happened. And again, this is another important aspect here that people need to understand here, is that we don't know the majority of the information of what exactly happened. We might know maybe 1% of the information, but there's still a vast majority of facts that we do not know here that we deserve to know. This also on the heels of yesterday, Prince Andrew officially announcing through his legal counsel that he is completely shutting the door to prosecutors and investigators who are looking into this Epstein saga. So again, he also hired Pinochet's former lawyer, as he's possibly fighting extradition to the United States, but being a part of the royal family gives him some protection from that. But still, even with that royal family protection, he's hiring top-notch, very expensive lawyers to protect himself from giving information to the federal authorities, which he promised to do. If you remember months ago, he came out and said, I will voluntarily cooperate with investigators. We want to make sure that all the victims get justice here. I will help them. Now, Prince Pinocchio pedo Prince Andrew completely shutting the door, according to, of course, U.S. prosecutors who are trying to investigate this. But again, they're facing a total uphill battle and also facing the possibility of a massive cover-up, which I think essentially is happening here, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm pleasantly surprised to see the Daily Mail still on them, trying to expose him. It seems like they're doing what they can. He's a bit of a, I don't think anybody really took him too seriously. I don't think he was a vital component to the royal family. So if anything needs to get sort of sacrificed away, I wouldn't be surprised if Andrew was hung out to dry there. He's a bit of a dope, but his story certainly doesn't add up. And I'm not surprised to hear that he hired the lawyer that defended Pinochet, because, who do you get when you're a dirty pedophile member of the royal family? You get a guy that represented a genocidal mass murder. That seems like a logical, nothing to hide there. Everything is normal. Everything is going exactly as according to plan.
Yeah, Henry Kissinger's buddy, Pinochet, of all individuals. I mean, these people are so connected, and it really just makes you wonder, what are people's limits for just a little bit of money, how controlled they are by money, and what evil things they're willing to do. And I'm not talking about, Pinochet or Prince Andrew here. I'm talking about the mid-level guys that have to sleep at night knowing that they're a part and aiding and abetting an international child abuse ring that essentially is hurting people. And from what we could gather was a large extortion racket to push for special interests and to push for geopolitical goals of some individuals. There's a lot of moves made by politicians that just make you scratch your head, like, why would they do this? This is so unpopular. This is going to make everyone in their base really not like them. This is directly against their campaign promise. And if you look at what the intelligence agencies have been up to, what Epstein has been up to, what a lot of these insiders have been up to, it makes sense that there's dirt on all of these politicians. And when someone wants something done for their benefit that screws over everyone, they just go to that politician and say, look, we got photos of you and we got videos of you doing this. We're going to release them and destroy your career. Or you make sure you do something. You support the military industrial complex. You support the pharma industrial complex, the prison industrial complex, and all these other large industries that are robbing people of their life, liberty, and their ability to even be somewhat happy in this existence that we all share. So really, this is a case, in my opinion, of power becoming too powerful, too unaccountable, and there needs to be a lot more transparency and a lot more decentralization when it comes to these top institutions of government. This is one out of many reasons why I call for decentralization and being responsible for yourself and not on government. You look at government, it's a nasty, nasty, nasty web of abuse, of hurt, of pain, of suffering, with some people even going as far as to call a satanic energy that just robs you of anything good, holy, and nice that you could enjoy.
Yeah, and you mentioned earlier about Ted Heath in the UK, former prime minister, and one of the things that one of the stories that obviously doesn't make it into the headlines is that back in the the day, they were negotiating the EEC, which was the precursor to the European Union. And the UK was negotiating how much of their fishing rights they were going to be giving away. Mm-hmm. And there was this, they had at the time, I think they had like 77%, and they wound up going down to about 22%. And they gave away this gigantic chunk. And everyone in the UK was like, what are we doing? Why would we ever get into this sort of deal? This is a bad deal. I don't understand. And Ted Heath was trying to justify it. Say, well, this is how we have to do it in order to... It turns out that the Germans were blackmailing him because he was a notorious pedophile, rapist, child murderer, and they had the goods on him. So, like you said, sometimes these decisions that are made, and people are looking around going, why would we ever agree to this? Sometimes the reason is a little bit more devious. It's that they have no choice. In their mind, they have no choice because the people above them have the goods on them. And actually, if you look at a lot of these decisions through that lens, the world starts to make a whole lot more sense. Obviously, it's dirty, but it makes sense as to why these horrible decisions are being made. It never seems... I'm with you. I can't wrap my head around the mentality that would allow somebody to behave this way, go to work for somebody like Epstein. Yeah, you make a lot of money and do all that stuff, but God, there's such a karmic price to pay. I wonder if these people have even considered that. I'm not a religious guy, but still, like, how do you view yourself? How do you feel about yourself? And you come home every day after lining up 3 different massages for Jeffrey Epstein every day. I mean, good Lord, I couldn't even imagine. Whatever they're paying, it's not enough to sell out that way.
Yeah, once you get a big picture of what's absolutely happening here, there's no way I could support more government. There's no way I could support these individuals having more authority over my life and existence. 1, they're just middleman, fat mafioso bureaucrats. 2, they're connected to a lot of powerful individuals that do evil things. I mean, the former prime minister of the United Kingdom was a serial abuser of children. He was a pedophile. The former Speaker of the House in the United States was a major pedophile. Yeah. And then these are the individuals that we entrust the most to represent us. No, I don't want any of these crooks representing me. I want my own sovereignty. I want my own responsibility. I want my own life to be in my own hands, not in the lives of satanic child abusing pedophiles that really are, let's call a spade here. They're most likely calling the shots from behind the scenes. Yeah. That's not an easy and comforting realization to come to, but all the evidence suggests this as a very high probability. Yeah. And when you look at that probability, I'm like, why would you want them to increase in their power and authority, to have more taxes, to have more, law enforcement, and all of this is just a charade that they're here to protect you. They're here to look out for you. In reality, I mean, we have seen governments being the true danger to human existence, to human sovereignty. And really, it's something that we all should take seriously. And until maybe the whole Epstein saga gets blown open, even then, I still wouldn't trust government.
Right. But, well, one of the things you get worked up about this, I get worked up about this, but in general, Americans aren't very good at rising up against their government. One group of people that seem to have it down to a science are the French. And you have done extensive work in Paris covering the Yellow Vest movement. In fact, I think I saw a video of you that you did where one of the people next to you got their hands blown off by a grenade or something like that. Like, those people... I mean, I know that America gives the French a hard time. If it wasn't for us, you'd be speaking German, and all that stuff. But let me tell you something. The French know how to protest, man. They will drive all their tractors up to the city from the farms, and they will riot for the next year plus. What did you find for all the time? You've been over there half a dozen times at least. What did you find after going to those Yellow Vest protests? What are they doing that we should be doing?
Yeah, I really appreciate the French a lot more than the British. No offense, British people, but I have my particular preference. But they've been also successful in many ways, bringing back a lot of the kind of austerity measures that have been brought onto them by, of course, the Rothschild banker globalist Emmanuel Macron, that the media has been saying will be the savior of Europe. Well, he's been implementing a lot of his globalist neoliberal policies, and he's been been screwing people over. And in response to that, we have seen something amazing happen, especially in the very beginning of this yellow vest movement, which again, it's not really the case now, but in the beginning, what we saw was this kind of strong energy of far left, far right, and moderates coming together, all on the goal of getting rid of this guy and getting rid of these horrible policies that screwed people over. It was very similar to the kind of Occupy Wall Street energy that I saw. Very rare moment where you could see people put aside their political differences, come together, and actually work together towards trying to establish an alternative and trying to voice their discontent. And the French are amazing, incredible protesters. I mean, protesting is just like a pastime for them. It's like a hobby for people there. Everyone takes part in them. And I've seen just the most intense, the most incredible, the craziest actions that I have ever seen in my life. And I've seen a lot of them. I've been to a lot of places. I've been to a lot of riots. I've been to a lot of protests. I've been to Ferguson. I've been in Baltimore. I've been in Brazil. I've been in Greece. I've been to, Hong Kong. And there's nothing that gets as intense as, of course, the French Yellow Vest movement. And I was more in danger in France, in Paris, in the capital of the one of the biggest Western cities in all of Europe. I was more in danger there than I was in Hong Kong. Hong Kong, I was a lot safer. Wow. So that definitely tells you something to the veracity of this protest that has been absolutely ignored by the mainstream media, but still continues to this day. There's protests right now happening with the yellow vests that just happened a few days ago. So this protest is not going away. There's still the underneath kind of aspect of this that a lot of people don't think about, because the conditions that created the yellow vest movement, they haven't gone away. They're getting worse. So there's going to be other movements like the yellow vest movement, like other protest movements that will spark up, that will create and be a voice for the larger discontent against the bigger system out there. And when that pops off, expect me to be there on the front lines reporting on it live and unedited, so you guys could get a front row seat into the crazy adventures. And it got crazy. I mean, I saw people literally, right next to me get their hand blown off by a police flashbang grenade. A bunch of people lost their eyes. A bunch of people got very seriously injured. There were some people that died because of accidents related to all the protests there. It gets crazy. It gets wild. And that undercurrent of discontent will only spread, will only continue, and will grow everywhere else. I'm expecting it to, especially in the next few years myself.
Well, people will say, you're obviously knee deep in the protests. You're always there wherever it is happening in the world. And people will often say to guys like you or me that don't love the government, they'll say, well, listen, man, if you don't like this government system, if you want total anarchy, why don't you go to Somalia then? As that's their go-to line. So you went to Somalia then. Because fuck them. That's why. What was Somalia like?
Well, this was another just cockamamie dumb idea that me and Jeff Berwick had.
Yeah, what a surprise.
Yeah, and Jeff Berwick always likes to, he likes to push the envelope as much as he can.
Yeah. And
after our Venezuela trip, he's like, we got to do something to top this. And I'm like, whatever. I'm just here along for the ride. He was like, Somalia. Got to go to Somalia. Everyone keeps telling me to go to Somalia. I want to go to Somalia. And I'm like, that's a bad idea. It's horrible. He started preparing for it. And then 2 weeks later, I contact Jeff. I'm like, okay, I'm starting to prepare for it. Seriously, I got this lined up and this lined up. I got a fixer here. I got someone that could, safely escort us here. I got a story that I'm building here. I'm working my sources on the ground to make sure that this is a successful endeavor. And then that's when Jeff's like, this is a bad idea. And then 2 weeks later, we're both on a plane flying into Mogadishu, Somalia, with planes that have crashed along the airport, watching them, looking at each other, both saying that this is a horrible, bad idea.
Great.
And it was pretty dumb. Yeah. But luckily we got in there and had great protection from hired mercenaries that we had to hire to protect us. and really, really incredible people that we've met there. Really incredible facts that we met there. We also met a lot of people who were, surviving and thriving under the most craziest situations. I still remember when talking to, a local Somali and being described a situation where he's perplexed to what happens in America when there's a terrorist attack and everyone changes their Facebook profiles and they mourn. And he's like, all these stupid Americans doing all this thing. In Somalia, you get your hand blown off the next day, you're riding the bike one-handed going to work. It doesn't matter. This is our life here. And you guys are pansies compared to all of us. I'm like, that kind of makes sense. They usually go through a major terrorist incident once every 2 weeks. The time we were there was 3 major terrorist incidents the day of, including on the road that we were previously on. There was a terrorist attack and a bombing that happened there. And it's more common than ever. And surprise, 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 it's not an anarchist place. It's a place that's the total opposite and epitome of anarchy. It's a place filled with many governments. Many governments get involved in there. We're talking about Qatar. We're talking about Turkey. We're talking about Saudi Arabia. We're talking about the United States. We're talking about AFRICOM. We're talking about Kenya. And they really have so much government, so many different forces. And it's just a total mess there where governments around the world send in weapons to fight off some of these forces. And the soldiers just take these weapons and they sell them to the bad guys automatically so they could live. And they're making the situation that much worse. Intervention is not working down there. And, the people of Somalia, truly resilient, incredible people that was fascinating to be able to meet and to interact with and just to see this complete different lifestyle of human beings compared to, of course, New York City, where you have all these latte drinking, flip-flop wearing yuppies complaining about their latte being too hot or their Wi-Fi signal not being strong enough. I'm like, you freaking idiots. Yeah. Like, you have no idea what the world is really about. We had to eat camel there. And still, like, we were in a situation where it was far better than most of the people that were there in Somalia. So it was a dumb idea, but I'm happy I took the trip. It definitely expanded my perspective. I did a video down there talking to a local farmer that had over a dozen of his close family relatives that were murdered by a failed, botched, incorrect U.S. military raid that was conducted on his farm and killed everyone while he was out and not on the farm. So I interviewed that person. That video is still up there, and it just shows you the true perspective of how intervention is completely asinine, backwards, idiotic, and stupid for anyone or any country to be involved in.
Yeah, I suppose that it was probably swimming with the bankers from the World Bank and IMF.
Yeah. We had a UN guy on the same plane with us, and he was there to figure out how to tax the local Somalis. I'm like, well, good luck there, buddy. Yeah, really, it was pretty hilarious to see the interactions between him and, of course, Jeff Berwick, the dollar vigilante.
Yeah. Jeff doesn't tend to keep his mouth shut in situations like that. I would imagine he probably told him taxation is theft and he should get back on the plane and get out of there.
Yeah. Jeff was trying to find liquor because, he's mostly an alcoholic half the time. And they told him if he drinks liquor, that they're going to have to give him lashes and whip him in the middle of the town square.
That'd be good for video, though. I got to be honest with you. I was like,
please, let's do this. Let's get him a drink. Let's do this. Let's film this. This is going to be a great video. Jeff wasn't happy. Jeff didn't want that. Our fixer told us that there's liquor at the airport. There was no liquor at the airport. Jeff was not happy. And, we were in and out of there. But I'm happy we were able to do it, even though Jeff Berwick was pissed he couldn't get any liquor. But he got a lot of camel to eat.
Gross. But I guess that's
camel's weird. I don't know if you ever had camel, but
no,
that's fine. It's a peculiar.
I've ridden a camel, but I've never eaten a camel.
Yeah, it's a particular taste.
Yeah, I would imagine. So where to? Where next on your Luke's World tour?
Quarantined.
Quarantine.
Been working here on the channel.
You're not going to Wuhan, right? You're not investigating.
Well, that's what Jeff wants to do. But even Jeff took a big kind of break from everything. I'm here, working and expanding the operation and the business as best as I can. I've been, living life to the fullest and working my butt off all over the world. But it'll be good to sit down a little bit and to, make sure that all the videos are made well, made sure that my team is set up in a proper way. And right now, I honestly don't want to travel with the craziness unfolding with the coronavirus. I am taking it serious. I am here with family in New York City, and if things get really bad, they're going to get bad here in New York City. So I'm preparing for the worst, getting ready for the worst. And I'd rather be here with my family than, alone somewhere, by myself. And even in a safer location, I would still rather just be here to make sure that everything, rides out the storm very smoothly. So we're expecting it to get pretty bad here. So we're ready.
Well, you've been doing great work for a very, very long time. And that comes with a price that you pay socially, a price that you have to pay monetarily. So how can people support your work? Because God knows you're not going to be getting it from Google and YouTube AdSense and things like that, between the shadow banning, the demonetization and all that stuff. But this operation doesn't run on love. So people need, you need to make some money here. How can people get you some money?
I wish it did run on love. I would be extremely rich. But I just made a post on my Twitter, twitter.com/Luke We Are Change, highlighting all the demonetized videos that were confirmed by manual review. Obviously, we're getting hit. We're trying to work out a second strategy where we have a second channel. The second channel is not monetized yet. So truly, people's support is more crucial than ever. And the easiest way to get involved is on wearechange.org/donate. wearechange.org/donate. And you can get involved by making one-time $1 donations or $5 a month donations, or even just donations without you even having to spend a single dime, through institutions like Brave and Presearch that have been incredible tools that allow you to have some privacy and allow you to also have some crypto while supporting other individuals with crypto as well. We also take crypto. We take anything and everything. That website has everything lined up, wearechange.org/donate, with the many ways that you could be involved. And we appreciate everyone from the bottom of my heart for helping us, because if it wasn't for people helping us, we wouldn't be here. We're only here because of the people's support, and I'm eternally grateful for that.
Yeah. And if you're in a position to support financially, please do. If you're in a position where you've got more time than money, then share. Get this word out, get the word out there about We Are Change. Share this podcast, share this video, check out Luke's stuff, subscribe to his channel, resubscribe to his channel the next day, resubscribe to it the day after that, because you're going to.
And the second channel.
Yeah, get on the second channel. Let's fill that up and spread the word. Luke, you're a savage. You're the best. Thanks so much. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it very much.